A maximum security prison has one job: keep drugs out. It's failing. Between 2001 and 2018, deaths from drug and alcohol intoxication inside U.S. state prisons increased by more than 600%, according to analyses of Bureau of Justice Statistics mortality data. Think about that. These are facilities surrounded by layers of razor wire, body scanners, armed towers, and non-stop surveillance. Yet contraband keeps pouring in. The problem isn't that a single guard fell asleep or a camera broke. It's a relentless game of adaptation. Every single time a prison locks down one route, smugglers find a workaround, and it usually starts with something completely ordinary, like a letter in the mail. Walk into a prison mailroom on any given day, and you'll see stacks of birthday cards, letters from home, and drawings from kids. For decades, guards just checked these for hidden cash or coded messages. Then, things changed. Smugglers realized they didn't need to hide drugs inside the envelope. They could turn the paper itself into the drug. Traffickers started taking synthetic cannabinoids, what people call K2 or spice, dissolving them into liquid and spraying them directly onto standard sheets of paper. Once the paper dries, it looks completely normal. There are no pills to rattle, no powder to spill, and nothing unusual to catch a guard's eye. But once that letter gets to the tier, it's a goldmine. Inmates cut the page into tiny squares, each carrying a highly potent dose. Behind bars, a single 1-inch square of paper can sell for hundreds of dollars. A simple greeting card from the outside suddenly becomes worth thousands. This wasn't a rare trick. An investigation into 56,000 drug seizures across Ohio's prison system showed that drug-soaked paper had become one of the most common ways contraband got inside. It forced corrections departments to face a bizarre reality. They couldn't trust the paper anymore. To stop it, states like Kansas, Wisconsin, and New Jersey completely overhauled their mail systems, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons did the same at many facilities. Now, mail goes to an off-site scanning center. Staff scan the pages, print a black and white photocopy, and destroy the original. The inmate only gets the copy. It changed a decades-old tradition of prisoners receiving physical letters from their families, not because of what was written on the page, but because of what the paper could carry. But fixing the mailroom just pushed the pressure somewhere else. Most people watching from the outside assume visitors are bringing in the bulk of the drugs. But visitors face massive hurdles: X-ray machines, metal detectors, and guards staring right at them. The path of least resistance is often the one walking right through the front gate every morning with official permission. Think about the sheer number of people it takes to run a prison: correctional officers, nurses, maintenance workers, electricians, and food vendors. The vast majority of these employees do a tough, thankless job with total integrity. But organized smuggling networks don't need to corrupt the whole staff. They only need to flip one. Once an insider is on the payroll, the fences don't matter anymore. The challenge isn't beating a high-tech security wall. It's using a person who already has the keys to walk right past it. Federal court records show a steady stream of employees caught accepting bribes to carry drugs or phones into secure blocks. One of the largest stings on record, Operation Ghost Guard in Georgia, ended with roughly 130 people indicted, and 47 of them were correctional officers. The takeaway for investigators was brutal. The perimeter hadn't been breached from the outside. It had been opened from within. You can buy better scanners and install more cameras, but technology can't measure a person's integrity. When an employee gets caught, the rules tighten up, but the financial temptation stays exactly the same for the next person who steps into the uniform. Eventually, though, smugglers figured out a way to take the human element out of the equation entirely. They looked up. A consumer drone completely changes the math of prison security. It doesn't care about razor wire, it doesn't have to bribe a guard, and it doesn't stop at a checkpoint. It can cross a prison perimeter in seconds. A drop that used to require a complex inside network can now be done by one guy sitting in a parked car a quarter-mile away. In Ohio, an operator managed to fly a drone straight to a specific cell window in the dark, over and over again. Over 7 months, that single setup completely bypassed the walls and cleared nearly $100,000 in profit. By 2026, federal investigators broke up a drone network that looked less like a ragtag hustle and more like a corporate logistics company. The crew operated out of an old daycare building they called the Lab, using it to prep high-end drones, swap out heavy-duty batteries, and package shipments. They pulled off dozens of coordinated nighttime drops into 10 federal prisons across 8 different states. They weren't just dropping small packages of drugs either. They were delivering phones, chargers, tobacco, escape tools, and weapons. The scale was so intense that one federal official remarked that on certain nights, the sky above the prison yard looked like a busy regional airport. 12 people were charged, and some are now facing life sentences for a crime where they never once set foot on prison property. Yet, even with high-tech chemistry and aviation, the oldest smuggling route in history still works because of a vulnerability no prison can ever truly close: basic human contact. During an approved visit, inmates are usually allowed a quick hug or a handshake at the start or the end. In those few seconds, when a guard glances away or a child makes a noise, small amounts of contraband can still be passed during moments of physical contact. The U.S. Supreme Court weighed in on this crisis 40 years ago in Block v. Rutherford, ruling that jails have every right to ban contact visits to stop drugs and weapons. But cutting off human touch completely comes with a massive cost. It breaks down the exact family ties and mental stability inmates need if they're ever going to successfully make it on the outside. That pressure forces prisons into a fragile compromise, and that compromise leaves a permanent window open for smugglers. At the end of the day, managing a secure facility is an endless game of whack-a-mole. If you photocopy the mail, the money moves to bribing staff. If you crack down on the staff, the drones start flying. If you jam the drone signals, people go back to passing packages during visits. The state can build the thickest concrete walls money can buy, but it cannot eliminate the demand inside them. Maximum security prisons were built to solve a physical problem, keeping dangerous people from breaking out. They were never truly designed to handle a hyper-adaptive, multi-million-dollar market that is desperate to break in. The strange part is that prisons are not fighting one enemy. They're fighting an entire system. A system with money, a system with demand, and a system that learns every time it gets stopped. The walls get higher, the scanners get smarter, the drones get quieter. But the biggest challenge was never the prison itself. It was the market outside the walls, constantly searching for a way in. If you want to understand the hidden systems most people never think about, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.